Hello. Hello again. Hello again. So we have been talking the entire day. So it's a risk that we will just keep talking on the things we have been talking about. So
which ones?
Exactly. So let's reboot the discussion, and I have prepared some questions for you. Let's see if we can pin this. There you go. So, Li-Anne, thank you so much for coming here to Sweden, speaking with us here today. And we're here today to talk about the topic of that reducing and completely eliminating human suffering is possible. And maybe to start out with, would you like to just briefly introduce who you are and what you do and your role in this project?
Sure. I'm a full-time meditation teacher, Buddhist meditation teacher, and I've been on this quest for understanding the human mind for maybe 30 years. I have a degree in psychology, a master's in neuroscience, and a PhD in neuropsychiatry. Also trained as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, but more importantly, I also trained under meditation masters throughout the world, and really am interested in integrating the knowledge of East and West, that very experiential way of experiencing our human condition from a meditation perspective. And so a few years ago, I moved solely to practice, to teach meditation as a full-time thing.
And just as a start, since we're talking about meditation, and how would you define, when you talk about meditation, what do you mean with that?
I talk about meditation as the optimal interaction between what I define very distinctly as attention and awareness. Now, most people think of meditation as only attention, putting your attention on the breath at the nostrils. Whereas I find the awareness piece, which is a distinct faculty of mind, far more important in the process of meditation and of life. So I really, really emphasize first the distinction between attention and awareness, and second, the emphasis on awareness first, and letting that guide how you train your attention.
And would it be possible for you just right now to really make sure that everyone in the audience get this distinction between attention and awareness? Would it be possible for you to, I don't know, experientially explain it even more?
Sure, sure. So attention is what we all know. You know, if I say, look at my hands, you're looking at my hands, your attention is directed there. At the same time, you might also be aware of the colors of what I'm wearing, the sounds of my voice. At the same time, you're aware of other things. Your attention can see details. Your awareness is more holistic, it's more gestalt, and it's able to bring in experiences from other senses, as well as other elements of that particular, in this case, visual field. And the importance of that, so in meditation is very, very, they're used very, very specifically. When you train your attention, you become calmer and more focused. When you train your awareness, you have more perspective, and the wisdom of the meditation arises there. So the peace and the wisdom are said to be the two wings of a bird. Like the two wings of a bird, they're both essential. So in meditation, you need to train the attention so that you're calm and your awareness such that you're not just calm in a dumb way. There's some wisdom to it.
And do you think that the way you teach meditation, does that distinguish itself from how others teach meditation in where you initially put the focus of the student?
Yeah, I guess the word focus is the key.
I also heard it.
Yeah. Usually people say, focus your attention on your breath or something like that. So that's very much an attentional thing. Whereas what I'm talking about is the awareness part, which is more the knowing quality. You know that you're sitting right now. You know that you're breathing right now. Can you continue with that knowing quality of mind? That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about awareness. That conscious, that being in touch with being conscious of what's happening rather than the content of what you are conscious of. Does that make sense, actually? Shall we?
Does it make sense for the audience?
Surely there are questions. I see it bubbling up.
Please repeat it again.
Awareness is the knowing quality of what's happening. Right now, you know, so you can know lots of things. You can know you can understand what I'm saying. Can you also, and you can see me, you can hear me. You can also know that you're seeing me. You can also know that you're hearing me. You can feel your breath at the nostrils. You can also know that you are feeling your breath at the nostrils. That knowing quality is what I like encouraging people to connect with a lot more initially, and we use that to train the attention later on. So the difference is most teachers go straight to the attentional part, missing out that awareness part.
And do you have one simple suggestion how people can start noticing awareness, connecting to awareness?
Yeah, just asking yourself what's happening right now. Like if I were to ask you right now what's happening, what do you know is happening right now? What would you say?
There is sounds here.
You know what's
That we are watching you.
sitting in a particular position, the temperature is as what it is, the lighting is in this way. Still, that you're breathing perhaps. We can know so many different things. Can you connect with that knowing? That's how I encourage everyone to start. It's really not difficult, but to remember to do that becomes trickier.
So to really ask yourself what is happening right now, and remember to
Keep asking.
keep asking.
Yeah.
You mentioned once that you ask yourself that question every time you blink.
Yeah, that was, slight tendency to be a little bit obsessive. How can I do this a little bit more often? Oh, wait, I blink a lot of times. Every time I blink, I am connecting with awareness. It's a reminder to be aware. In a more general sense, I have students who are perhaps doctors at a hospital. Every time they walk down a certain corridor, they see a certain painting, for example. Every time they see the painting, can you remember to connect with your awareness? Can you ask yourself what's happening? Other students work in front of a computer a lot. Every time they perhaps get up or they reach out for the mouse or they stand up to get a cup of tea, can you just connect with what's actually without just being consumed by what you're thinking of on the screen. Similarly, when you're thinking, it's great to be thinking, but can you also know that you're thinking? And now the thinking is getting a little bit obsessive, and in fact, you're working on that so much that it's gotten dark, you haven't eaten, and actually you're busting to go to the loo. Can you be more aware of all the other things that are happening right now so that you can actually continue what you want to be putting your attention on in a more, with a better perspective? So that awareness is really just about perspective.
So let's switch the discussion over to awakening.
Mhm.
How would you define awakening?
Freedom from suffering, and I'm going to use the word suffering in a very specific way. Freedom from resistance in life. Knowing what's happening is really important. Being aware, in other words, being aware of what's happening is really important. But then frequently we're aware of something and we resist it. You know, it's like it's too cold, or it's too uncomfortable, or I'm hungry, or I'm too full, whatever. We have this resistance to life. That resistance is what, in the Buddha's way of thinking, that is the cause of suffering. That resistance to what is actually happening in life. So the resistance comes in a couple of main forms. Either what's happening right now is not pleasant and you want to push it away, and you have an aversion to what's happening. Or there's a sense of what's happening right now, it's not enough, I want that. So there's a greed, you're reaching out for something else. So being more aware of these mind states allows you to see through them a little bit better.
And I'm very sure that many who are watching really want to have the answer to the question, how can I be awakened? And what's your answer to that?
Single answer in one sentence?
No, you can answer in many sentences.
How can I be awakened?
Or how do you recommend people?
First, build your awareness. When you're aware of your resistance, when you're aware of your non-resistance. So you're not always resisting life. Sometimes things are going really, really smoothly. So give the example of if you've got a headache. You know, sometimes you have a certain, let's say a level 7 headache that you would objectively say to a nurse at a hospital that it's level 7. Sometimes that level 7 headache feels absolutely intolerable. Sometimes that level 7 headache might feel like a level 7 headache, but okay, I just need to lie still right now and I just need to do these sorts of things. That difference between how you're feeling of that intolerable headache, that aversion that you have, and the fact that there is a headache there, and you need to take certain actions because of that. That difference is that level of resistance that I'm talking about, and that determines how much you suffer. So when you start seeing that and being able to understand how to work with it, then you are well on your way to eliminating suffering. Because if you don't have that resistance, you don't have the suffering in the way I've defined it.
And I think this connects very well to how you define meditation. And I have also heard you saying, if you suffer, then you're not meditating. Is that correct?
Yeah, I probably said something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was also if you observe yourself while practicing, for example, and you notice that you follow the suffering rather than, for example, observing thoughts and emotions arising. Is that do you agree with that basic statement?
Yeah, basically, we can have something happen in our lives and we suffer from it. And if we continue rethinking about it, we can continue suffering more. And then you keep thinking about it, and it increases that aversion, and you suffer more and more. And of course, I'm talking here in terms of the psychological sense of suffering. I'm not talking about some real external suffering that people do go through. So in that psychological sense, that resistance to what's happening, and the more aversion you have to this, an example could be that, I don't know, simple examples. You're driving on the roads and someone cuts you off, you're shouting at them and you're getting really, really angry at that. And then the more you think about what they did, the more you get angry at that. And then you go home and you tell your spouse, oh, that's what happened. And you're reliving it. You're re-triggering that suffering mind. Here's another scenario. You're driving there. You have the same reaction. You get angry because someone cuts you off. You notice that anger and you go, okay, that anger arose out of a habit that was formed in my mind. You can't do anything about it. That's arisen already. What can I do about it now? Acknowledge that. Oh, be aware of that. Acknowledge that. Accept it. And then take action from here on. You notice yourself starting to rethink about the situation. Catch yourself. Let it come, let it be, and let it go. Bring your attention back to something else. Do you want to continue holding on to that anger? Or might it be more beneficial for you if you actually looked around and saw that it's actually a beautiful day and there are other things to be noticing that would make your day a little bit cheerier? So keeping perspective on what's happening in life rather than getting fixated on one thing that's you will claim has ruined your day, when actually it was just a moment's notice situation that you can actually now shift your attention to. So using attention, shifting attention is actually really, really useful when you know the difference between awareness and attention. So you can always shift using awareness, shift your attention to something a little bit more beneficial for you and people around you.
I think what you're saying now really ties well into the title of your book, Get Off Your Cushion, Weaving Meditation into the Fabric of Life. Yes. So you really stress meditating throughout the day. Could you just please say something about that? Yeah.
So similar to what I just said about being aware throughout the day, that's what I'm talking about. Meditation is actually mainly about awareness. So the more aware you are throughout the day, the more you can choose wise action from that. So if you're aware of what's happening, you come to a place of acceptance of this is just what's happening. You're not fighting it in any way, no resistance. So we've dropped that suffering part. And then now you choose what action. There's a sense of agency that's involved. You can choose what you do as a result of what you're aware of. So if you can actually be aware throughout your day, you can be more open to all the possibilities of different actions that might be more beneficial for you throughout the day, as opposed to just going ahead with the habitual patterns that we always have. And those are the only patterns that you have in your life. It opens the possibility for other ways of being.
And if you were to just state why you wrote your book right now, maybe we can say briefly what it is about and why you chose to write it right now.
It's literally teaching. It's aimed at two populations. It's aimed at total people who are not really interested in meditation, but have a lot of stress and anxiety in their lives. The first half of the book is very much aimed at that group of people who know there's a better way of doing life, but don't know how. So it's that's one group of people. And then there's this other group of people who I work with a lot, very experienced meditators, or somewhat experienced meditators, who don't know who think that meditation is about sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed and focusing on your breath. Well, that may be one aspect of it, but it's not really what it is. You can't expect to be enlightened, awakened, if you spend a mere 1, 2, or 3 hours a day doing that. You've got all these other waking hours that you can be doing, awakening your awareness. And so this book is very much written for meditators who don't know how to take their practice off the cushion. I mean, every meditation teacher says the same thing. Between every retreat, everyone says the same thing. Practice in your daily life. But people don't really know how to do that. Or you get the inane sort of blog article which says, oh yes, focus on your breath during your day. It's like, well, it doesn't cut the cheese. If you can just be more aware, more conscious of your existence, of what's actually happening, of your metacognitively, be more introspective throughout your day, you'd be able to, instead of feeling the urge of shouting at that person, you might be able to refrain from shouting at that person. And sort of noticing that before it gets to that place of rage, before it gets to the place of anger, before it even gets to irritation, you might notice a mild annoyance that the person's reminding you of whoever, and actually catching yourself to change the course of the habitual trajectory that you'd have in your life. It impacts yourself, it impacts other people in a very, very big way. And I just found that a lot of people just had no idea how to continue building their awareness throughout their day.
So let's say that someone really wants to eliminate their suffering. They will start reading your book, practicing it in daily life, and really integrating it into the fabric of their lives, so to speak. What's your recommendation for them to continue when they have read that book?
Don't just read it, actually implement it. Like I said to you, there was someone who wrote to me recently, someone I haven't met, who said, I'm at page, 30 or whatever. And there's been a total game changer for me. I'm going to stop reading the book and just practice this until I can really incorporate this in my life. And then I'll continue reading on. I liked that a lot because the book's the books are very short. It's a very small book. You can read it cover to cover in a couple of hours if you really wanted to. But there's so many bits of actual how to practice, what to do. See, it starts off with this quote from the Buddha, which translates as "see for yourself." The idea is to have these ideas of how to practice it yourself, and then see for yourself how it can impact your life. So, I said there were two reasons. I told you one of the reasons why it took a year to edit the book. The other reason is because I had two editors. The other reason that I didn't mention today was one of my editors wanted to read it over and over again and practice every single thing I said in that. And it took her that long until I eventually said to her, you can continue reading it after other people can read it again. So she, that's when it kind of got pushed along a little bit more. So that there are lots of different practices there, accumulated through the dozens and dozens of meditation masters I've sat under and learned from. Again, a little bit of an obsession of mine before. I heard of a good meditation master and I had to sit and learn from them. And yeah, that's just the way I liked doing it. So I find myself in a very fortunate position where I could learn from these people. I live in Western Australia. Flying to Asia was really easy. Being Asian myself, I understood something that I think a lot of Western meditations don't understand. Sometimes when an Asian teacher says something, a lot gets lost in translation. And so sometimes certain things get taken literally when they don't really mean that. So I think I was lucky enough to be able to do a bit of translation. Okay, you said that, you really meant that, didn't you? And so I questioned that.
And I can imagine a lot of people watching this know you from that you're also teaching the Mind Illuminated. And how would you recommend people, how do you see the relation between the teachings from your book and the Mind Illuminated?
Yeah, I see it as directly compatible. The teachings from the book are very much from my another teacher of mine, Siada Uttajania, who really teaches mindfulness as a way of life. So that's where most of the book, and I feel like his teachings are very, very well known and received in the world, but not nearly enough. So I just put my little personal spin onto it. And so it's not as if it's anything original. It's just using my own life and my clients and my students' lives as little examples of how you could apply this into your life. So that's very much what the practice is about. But in terms of the Mind Illuminated, it's if you're familiar with Mind Illuminated, it starts off with the 4-step transition into meditation. And in the first step of the 4-step transition, they talk about being aware. I really emphasize this in my students a lot more. Stay with that first step first, build that awareness. And then after that, the whole process of the next few steps where you bring the attention into it becomes really, really natural and really effortless and pleasant. Whereas a lot of people get the awareness, they go for the attention, and they strong arm it, and they try to be concentrated, and then they end up with a very big headache, stuck hitting a brick wall. You know, that furrow of a concentrated meditator who is getting really just frustrated because they can't concentrate. That's what I try to avoid.
And I've heard you say somewhere else that the stages in Mind Illuminated, for example, it's a description, not a prescription.
Yes.
Could you explain briefly what you mean with that?
Yeah, so the book, The Mind Illuminated, is like a 500-page meditation manual that only the die-hard meditators, most of whom have PhDs, go through diligently. Well, and a lot of them do it in a way that makes them think that this is what I need to do next, and this is what I need to do next, and this is what I need to experience next. And so they see it as a prescription for what's happening. The way I teach it is you build that awareness, and then the mind naturally wants to rest its attention on, for example, bodily sensations related to the breath around the nostrils. And then it naturally wants to see that in finer detail. And then it naturally wants to go to the next stage. So it's a lovely description of what naturally happens. Whereas if you try to strong arm it the other way, it just doesn't work. And that's why people talk about being stuck in certain stages. The awareness is simply not strong enough to allow for the natural progression to occur effortlessly and enjoyably. I emphasize enjoyability a lot in the process because we use positive reinforcement as a very useful way of helping us train our mind.
And maybe you could just explain a bit more how that can be in practice, that we use positive reinforcement as part of the practice.
Okay, so if we are, we find ourselves stuck in mind wandering, so the mind wandering, this is a common phenomenon. People usually talk about the monkey mind, the mind's all over the place. And if you're fixated on the attention model, that meditation means your attention needs to be in one place, the natural response, the normal response is you get frustrated. Mind's all over the place. I can't control it. Well, yeah, mind's all over the place. That's just the way it is. If you come from a space of awareness, then you can know that right now the mind's all over the place. That's awareness. Then you can come to the next stage. I can accept the mind's all over the place. Okay, bit of kindness with yourself. That's just what it is, right? You can't control it. Because of course, if you could, it wouldn't be all over the place because you didn't want it to be. But it is all over the place, even though you wanted it to stay in one place. So you accept that reality. And then next is, so I talk about it in terms of a 3-stage process: awareness, acceptance, and action. So now you're aware that mind's all over the place. You accept that fact. And now what action are you going to take? The action you take is the only action you can take. Is smile to the awareness for having alerted you to that fact. Because before you were aware of that, your mind was all over the place and you were following it all over the place. And now you're aware of your mind being all over the place. And so you smile to the awareness and say, thank you. That positive reinforcement encourages the awareness to reappear at that crucial moment in the future. What people usually do is, my mind's all over the place. They get frustrated. So what you're doing is punishing the awareness in one sense for having alerted you to that. So you remain in unawareness. So, that's counter to what we want to be training in meditation.
And do you think that the same 3-step process can be applied to basically everything you do in life? For example, compassion training, or if you practice, I don't know, generosity or stuff like that. Do you think you can apply the same 3-step thing, that you notice that, oh, I did something else. I can accept that I did that, and I can take action to intend to do it.
Yep. That can be applied to a lot of things. I wouldn't necessarily generalize to everything because I'm always cautious of doing that. But as you know, I'm big on giving people 3-step processes, because how can you forget 3 steps? And so I tend to sort of talk about things in terms of 3s to help that memory process. But it's certainly for awareness, that's a really good way. But in terms of the action, yes, you can choose, you can be aware of something, but your action in some other case could be something else. So if you find yourself in road rage, your action could be taking a few deeper breaths, or particularly if you're stressed, you notice your stress levels quite high. You accept the fact that that's just the way it is right now. And the action could be taking a few deep breaths, particularly the out breath being longer, changing using the physiological effects of deep breathing to actually take your stress levels down a notch. So the action part can change depending on the circumstance. But that general rule of be aware, finding acceptance. Now notice I said acceptance and not resignation. A lot of people mistake the two, conflate the two, and think it's resignation. Resignation leads to inaction. When there is deep acceptance, it opens up to possible new action. So that 3rd phase is about action. So it's really about agency. Meditation's not a process where you sit there in a passive mode. It's actually about wise action more frequently.
And the title of this talk is "What would our world be if everyone was awakened?" And I have taken that from your webpage. And do you think that, or maybe you can explain a bit why you choose to write that on your webpage?
It's been a thought experiment of mine for many decades. It's like, okay, some people are awakened. That's great. They have a lovely impact on the people around them, their inner circle, their whoever they interact with. That's nice. More people awaken. What if more people were awakened? What if we all of us in this room, didn't resist our experiences in life whatsoever? How much of our energy is used in resisting our experiences? What would our lives be like if we didn't have to waste that energy in the resistance and just get on with what we wanted to do? And I just really like that thought experiment, because I can sort of look at you and think, what would you do? And it's not about being more productive. It's about, maybe it is, but it doesn't have to be. It's not about being creative, but maybe it is for you. It's not about being anything in particular, but it's actually having the freedom to move around life in a more, I don't know, there's a sense of freedom and lightness to that whole process that I think is a lovely notion to hold in mind.
And do you have like any examples of what you think, what kind of impact, is it even possible to imagine the level of impact it would have?
Well, I'll tell you what it won't do. We will no longer be hurting other people, because it doesn't feel, it's against the part of this whole process is being able to tap into our incredibly deep web of interconnection. So it wouldn't make sense. Thich Nhat Hanh has this lovely saying that I think I mentioned in the book. Yeah, I think I did. Where the hammer, have you heard that before? The hammer and the nail? So one hand holds a hammer and the other hand holds a nail, and the right hand accidentally hits the left hand. What happens next? Does the left hand go, "You shouldn't have done that, you did that deliberately," and the right hand goes, "No, I didn't, no, it was your fault, you moved"? None of that happens. The most natural human response happens. One hand, the right hand holds the other hand and cradles it until it feels better. That natural response is obviously, it's obvious to us. But if a child were to fall right now, wouldn't the natural response be to pick the child up and cradle it until it felt better? If someone were to, so I don't think I need to go through lots and lots of examples, but the idea is the natural human response is actually one of compassion. So there would be no harming of another, because it would make no sense. We wouldn't deliberately use the hammer to hit the other hand. We wouldn't hurt other people. So how much brighter would the world be already, just with that one little example? And we wouldn't hurt ourselves either. Some of us are very harsh on ourselves. That would make sense to do.
And you write about this also on your webpage, and I will see if I can quote you. You write about freeing our mind, which is your website. Freeing our mind seeks to help as many people as possible develop the tools to make this vision a reality of everybody in the world can be awakened. The root of most of our struggles lies in our misguided notions that we are each separate individuals striving to survive in competition with other separate individuals in the world. And you have been talking about this in terms of interconnection, but can you just please elaborate a bit more on this misguided notion that we are separated individuals?
Well, it's natural in some ways. You are sitting there, you've got this set of experiences. I'm sitting here. Today's the first time we've met in person, even though we've met online before. And all these people are sitting there. This is the first time I've met you. So it's very, in one sense, it's very obvious that we are individuals. But sure, I'm speaking in English and you can all understand that. But even without that, I can connect with you. We can touch each other in a deeper, more fundamental way, even without language. And to what extent can we connect with that reality that we are so connected, that we are so linked in a very, very fundamental way, that we are not just me, Li-Anne, you, Robert, but we are also that space between. Psychotherapy, we often talk about the three people in the room, the client, the therapist, and the space between. To what extent can we really lean into that space between and discover more about our existence through that connection? So in the second half of my book, I very much talk about that in terms of not being under delusion, the actual connections work. To what extent can we actually really, really sink into that? And what are the ramifications if more of us do?
And you're really saying something there, that you're stressing that we are not the nodes of the networks. We are the connections in the network. And I'm sure while people are watching this, there's some people who says that, well, it sounds very good, but I'm still extremely certain that I'm a separate individual from you, and I'm separated from other people. What do you say to people who say things like that?
Can you feel separate and connected? So are you only separate, or can you also be something else? And that's usually my into opening people to other possibilities. I'm not denying your experience of separateness. Can we embrace that? And we kind of have a tendency to dichotomize in our society. But can we feel separate and feel connected? Why does it have to be one and not the other? What happens if we're just that? Don't we sometimes let go of that sense of separateness? Do we always come from selfishness? We don't. Can you notice times when you actually come from a space of selflessness? Can you notice when you're coming in from more of a space of selfishness? It's again that awareness of these different multitudes of states that we move through, that we can act accordingly to a more beneficial way for everyone.
So we have talked quite a lot now about what individuals can do to reduce their own suffering. We, of course, we're also connected to the interconnectedness, so to speak, and that. But if we still talk even more about, let's call it, scalability of these things. If we really are to make this spread to the entire planet, do you have any ideas about the scalability issues? Basically how to solve that?
Isn't that where you come in?
Could be.
I really believe, I mean, as you know, I have no idea about a lot of, I don't know, marketing type things and all that, but I actually really believe in the value of pure intentions. And I think when things come from a space of pure intentions, things just happen. It could well be that I meet someone who's able to share these teachings with lots of people. I could meet someone who's able to share these teachings with a few people, including their child who is able to do that. You know, it's like, I don't know what the limit of that is, but I do know that when something comes from a pure intention, it has more likelihood of spreading in a good way. Similarly, if something comes from a space of less pure intention, it has ramifications. And so I actually spend more time trusting in that than anything else. And then I'm open to possibilities.
But do you sense that there is a quite radical shift in front of us?
Who would have thought I'd be in Sweden? I mean, you know, this is all a whole bunch of serendipity here. I just happened to be in Europe, and it just actually happened to coincide with the release of my book just before. I didn't actually intend for it to. I happened to have a few days extra, and then we corresponded about something else. And so it just sort of happened that way. I'm really open. I really love these chance occurrences because they make life really exciting. They make life really interesting. I have no idea who I'm going to meet tomorrow and who I'm going to spend the day with, or whether I'm going to spend the day on my computer tomorrow. And I love that. I really, really love that. So is this a fantastic opportunity? Absolutely. But how much of these fantastic opportunities can we embrace all the time?
And if we assume that there is a radical shift in front of us, do you think there's any way that society can prepare for that?
Can society prepare for more love and kindness and compassion I would say that we are actually more than ready to receive that and open to that. I would imagine that what we need to prepare for is an ability to drop old notions that we're so fixated on. It's hard to drop concepts. It's really, really hard because they're concrete things. It's well defined, and they lodge in our psyches really, really strongly. So if we are willing as individuals to drop frameworks that are so solidly entrenched, then we're prepared for anything.
And today we are sitting at this place in Stockholm called Digital Futures. That is a collaborative arenas between, for example, the KTH School of Technology and the Stockholm University. And You have said previously this is not my area of specialty, but what do you see the role of digital futures and today's and tomorrow's technology as part of this transformation?
I mean, I love the various ideas we discussed today, including the ideas of perhaps using an AI system to help support and students to a certain extent integrate the foundational teachings here. I love the possibilities of that. I love the possibilities of using other technologies of human-computer interface to be able to potentially help encourage the building of more awareness with biofeedback and stuff like that. I love all the possibilities. They're really, really exciting. Yeah. And really, really cool too, some of the stuff that you're doing. So it's like it'd be wonderful if it could truly be supportive in the building of more awareness. Ultimately, awareness is an internal process. But what if it could be encouraged by technology? I think that's really, really exciting. Because obviously there are only a limited number of people with the expertise to teach at the higher level. But there are a lot of people who actually would benefit a lot from that simple process of being more aware, being more mindful.
And do you think that the teachings of the Dhamma is flexible enough, so to speak, to really integrate with what's going on in society right now in terms of digital transformation, for example?
Yeah, the Dhamma's never been just one thing. It's about wisdom. It's about our connection with other humans. It's about our shared humanity. So, and our existence in the world is very much in a digital space. So I don't see. I mean, I'd be cautious to say, right, do that only. You know, let's create an AI that alone will do things. I'm open to that possibility, but I'll also be cautious to fully embrace that entirely straight away. Let's wait and see. But certainly the possibility of being able to touch more lives, that would be really, really, really nice.
And do you see, so I think one way to put it is that we talk about digital technology now, and science can also be seen as a technology. And there's a lot of sciences that touch into meditation practice, for example, psychology and neuroscience and other stuff. And do you have any ideas or any things you would like to say about how you view the role of science in this future ongoing radical shift in society?
Yeah, I think science has played an interesting role more recently, because it's managed to provide a framework for which what would otherwise sometimes be a bit woo-woo type stuff, be legitimized. And so there's a logical progression. It's like whether it's the default mode network or just various different things that are discovered in science and described in a very logical way. It certainly helped convince a lot of people to explore this whole process of meditation. And as I said to you, about 70% of my students are software engineers, not the general meditation students you'd expect for necessarily for a teacher, but it's a fact. And I think science has played a large role in it. it showed the logic of this. The teachings of the Dhamma always have had a logic, but they've not always necessarily been accessible to more people. And, you know, digital futures. This is being recorded. It's being streamed on Zoom. It's being, you know, that's all the digital world as well, isn't it?
And maybe as a final thing, just before we have a short break, I'm sure many people who are watching now can connect to the intention that I really want to be part of a positive transformation of society in line with these teachings. What is your suggestion for them to start doing today or now?
Again, going back to the Buddha's words, see for yourself. Engage in this practice. Really build your awareness. Be more aware of what's happening. Be more conscious of what you're doing, of your every action, of every word that's uttered from your mouth, of the impact of every word and action that you're engaging in. See for yourself the powerful transformation that can occur within yourself and the people around you. And then you'd be more encouraged to continue, because again, that positive reinforcement is just beautiful. It works.
I agree. Okay, thank you so much, Li-Anne. We will have a short break and then we will open up for questions from the
Great.
audience.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. So 5 minutes break. That's great. So I will pause the recording for 5 minutes.
Lägre absorption, högre musik.
Ja, att det var ganska stor liksom, sample i musik. Det hade en särskilt modererande effekt på taget.
Speciellt. Vad spännande.
So now is the time to ask questions to Li-Anne from the audience, and we can take questions both from the online audience. Maybe you can raise your hand if you want to ask questions, and people here in the audience can just ask. Please go ahead.
So I'd like to ask a question about awareness versus attention. Because I thought I knew the difference, but I'm not so sure. I don't know how to ask the question though, because in awareness, becoming aware of something, isn't there attention in there?
Yep.
In the awareness.
So think about attention as a subset of awareness. So yes, whatever is in your attention is also in your awareness. There's so much more in awareness. So to what extent can you actually tap into the more part so that you have more perspective on things? So does that make sense? So initially, when we train awareness, we use attention because it's very hard to describe something. As a student once said to me, I find it really hard to grasp what awareness is. It's like trying to catch the wind. And I think that was just brilliant because she was trying to grasp and catch the wind. I said, don't try to catch the wind, feel it. Okay, so awareness it takes time, and it's really, really normal that you kind of think that you get what it is, and then you forget again. So initially we use attention to build awareness. So I might say, what are you aware of? I might say, you're aware that you're sitting. You're aware that you're breathing. You're aware that it's quite warm in here. You can be aware that I move my hands when I talk. You're aware of the sounds. You're aware of many, many things. So what we're doing each time is we're putting our attention on that. You're aware of the sounds, aware of the hand waving, you're aware of the color, you're aware of these. So we're using that to, it's almost like turning on a little tea light in that part and that part of a very, very dark room. So initially, it's like just a little bit of light there, and they don't seem connected. But with time, as you become more and more aware of things, I'm also aware that I'm feeling relaxed, aware that you're tense. You can be aware of more and more things as these lights appear more frequently and more closer to each other. Then that awareness becomes clearer. But it's perfectly fine to initially just think of awareness as something that you are wanting to build more of. And we use it by asking that question, what's happening right now? What can I notice? What can I be aware of in this moment? And then I'll just slowly light up the whole room eventually. So I with my psychotherapy clients, I used to talk about awareness in this way. It's kind of like being in a really, really dark room and knowing you want to get to the door. You know the door's somewhere over there, but it's dark and there's furniture all over. So initially you just crash into the various bits of furniture. Eventually you become aware that there's furniture there, there's furniture there, there's furniture there. That's kind of like putting on a little tea light there, where the furniture is. As you get better at this, as you build your awareness, it's like turning on the light. It's really obvious which direction you need to go because you can see the path. But initially, you just need to build it up a little at a time. And that's fine too. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm thinking of certain experiences I've had while meditating where there's a sense of feeling everything.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. It's kind of like an expanded feeling, and to me, there's usually a quality of timelessness in it.
Yes. Yes. So that's one particular quality of awareness that you experience. The trick there is not to confuse that experience of awareness for the only thing that awareness is, and nothing else counts. Actually, everything counts, and we want to keep building on that. So that's great that in those moments you would have been very aware, and so that quality of awareness did come to the fore. That's one aspect of awareness. There is more, and it's fun. So keep exploring. Any other questions about that or anything else? I suppose I have lots of questions.
Yes, I know.
What's happened?
Yep. I couldn't come up with one. Okay. I have a question about like emotions and awareness in sort of how to deal with emotions in an awareness-based practice.
Yeah. So with emotions, so name an emotion. So
I would say more difficult emotions like
anger. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So with something like anger, I usually asked my therapy clients and ask my students now, how do you know you're angry? That's a very, very strange question because you know you're angry. How? What changes in your body that indicate to you you're angry? So what would you say?
It's a question for me. I would feel sort of some warmth or heat in the body.
More also indicate chest breathing.
Yes, chest, stomach,
Chest stomach breathing. Yeah.
more thoughts or like more accelerated thoughts.
Okay. So again, that sense of movement is there, sense of heat in that sort of region, accelerated thought. So there's some movement, there's some heat. Notice I'm using kind of more neutral terms. When usually what people do is they instantly go into what they're angry about and they're off on that tangent. So being aware of the phenomenon of anger will allow you to be aware of these characteristic telltale signs of anger. And I think in my book I mentioned anger as a specific example, that quality of heat, that quality of movement. You know, if in the English language there are all these things, you're seeing red, you're fuming with anger, it's all that indicating that sense of heat and movement. Okay, great. So in terms of the awareness, you can be aware of it at a certain level. So in terms of my clients, I might say to encourage them, ask them, invite them to, would you be okay for us to stay with that feeling at the moment? Not the content of the anger, but the feeling of that heat at the moment. And if they feel safe enough to do so, they could stay with that. So if I were to, for example, just imagining that's the case, you know, if you're feeling anger, you might notice, okay, where is it? It's located here. Does it change? So again, I go through a different 3-step process there. What is happening? What is happening in terms of that? You describe it. Can it be okay just for this moment? So sinking into that acceptance again, but asking it in a different way. Can whatever I'm experiencing right now be okay just for one moment? And then in the next moment, notice, has it changed in any way? Has it gotten stronger? I avoid using the words worse and better. Has it gotten stronger? Has it gotten weaker? Has it moved? And it doesn't really matter, even if it's gotten stronger. Can that be okay? Just for one moment. And it's really quite remarkable if you can drop into that space of okayness in one moment. In the next moment, what's actually happening right now? Can that be okay? Just for this moment. The patients with cancer that I was working with, who were, a lot of them had this existential, understandable fear that was arising. It's remarkable how possible it was for them to find that space of okayness just for one moment. It doesn't really matter what the next moment is. And in the next moment, notice what's happened. Has it changed it in any way? I'm here alluding to the Buddhist notion of anicca, pointing them in that direction, seeing that impermanence of existence that actually happens from a moment-to-moment basis, not talking to them about that concept, helping them discover it in their own experience, and that sense of acceptance, deep acceptance of the experience. So what they're afraid of is totally understandable. In this particular case, I'm talking about they're afraid of dying. But that experience of fear of the butterflies in the stomach or the palpitations in the heart, can those palpitations of the heart, that movement in the stomach, can that be okay just for one moment? Can you drop into that space of okayness? And then in the next moment, oh, that's more intense. Can that be okay in that moment? It's incredibly powerful to be able to sit with your clients, especially in the work that you do, to be able to sit there with you being the container of okayness with them initially. They very quickly learn to realize that they can actually learn to be the container of okayness themselves. So it really doesn't matter what the emotion is. Drop the content, drop the emotion itself, because that's loaded. A person who's experiencing depression and has experienced that for decades has a lot of stories associated with it. It's too solid a concept, whereas the heaviness is a feeling that they experience in other aspects of their lives. Someone who's experienced anxiety for decades might, that feeling of a panic attack might trigger a whole bunch of other fears, whereas that movement, that increased heart rate, very neutral term, also happens when they're excited to see someone, also happens after they've run on the beach for X amount of time. So to just get it to the physiological, get them attuned to the physiological process, the normal, natural physiological process, non-pathological. Allow them to experience really that space of okayness in your presence initially, and they can really very quickly learn to experience it for themselves as well. So again, that awareness is not enough. Awareness is the first step, and then the deeper acceptance, and then the action. You know, in this case, the action of what else to look out for. And I'm pointing to anicca, but the change. Therefore, they really only need to experience that in that one moment, because the next moment is different. And even if it's more intense, they only need to find that place of okayness in this new moment. And if you can handle one moment and the next moment, you're getting confident that you can handle the next moment, irrespective of how intense it is, because it is just that moment, and you know it's going to change. And they'll get used to seeing that it actually changes. And sometimes it moves up and down, and sometimes it moves all somewhere else. And then that sense of stuckness releases a little bit.
A little bit of a related question. Well, first of you, thank you very much for a very nice talk. The things that you say resonate very much within me. Within my own meditation practice, I have found that the most difficult thing to sort of be accepted about is not necessarily the physical emotions, but rather the thinking process. That the thoughts sort of lie in the way of being aware. That it is just so much thoughts going on in the head that they're blocking the possibility of being aware of what's going on.
It's telling me that they are thoughts. That means you're aware that they're thoughts, right? So there can be thoughts, and you can be aware that thinking's happening. What you're saying also is, so what I'm suggesting is, you're already aware. But what you don't like is being hooked by the thoughts.
That is correct, yes.
So catch yourself being hooked by the thoughts. And when you realize, I've been hooked by the thoughts, you smile at the awareness. Thank you. I was hooked by the thoughts. Now I'm aware that I'm hooked by it. Every time you come out to the meta level of awareness, you smile to the awareness. The opposite is what we normally do, is we get frustrated that we've been hooked on our thoughts. Again, work on the positive reinforcement whenever awareness is present. So in the Mind Illuminated, they talk about that as the aha moment. It's a magical moment. You've been really stuck in those thoughts. And then, I've been stuck in that thoughts. Big smile. Thank you, awareness. Appreciation for that awareness, for giving you this opportunity to now let go of the thought and come back to your object of meditation. But the smiling and the positive reinforcement is the far more important part. So if you can build that into your meditation, then you never need to be worried that you were stuck in thought, because you know exactly what to do. Again, the A part, the action, the last A, the action part, awareness, acceptance, and action. Let go, smile to the awareness, let go of the thought with that same renewed interest in your meditation object. Gently, gently, gently bring your attention back. need to emphasize the word gently because everyone goes, put your attention back there. It's like you've missed a few steps there. Smile to that awareness. It's really, really important. And you will find that that will make all the difference. And if that becomes a natural thing, you're always smiling. It doesn't matter whether your thoughts have been wandering. It's always a pleasant thing because you have these opportunities to wake up. And waking up is just being aware each time you have that opportunity. Do you have a follow-up question with that? Because I sense that you might.
No, I think what made most sense what you said is that I'm really resisting, that I really don't like getting stuck in these thoughts. So I just maybe
it's natural.
Yeah.
Just remember it's natural. If you had a control over it, you would have done something about it before. You don't have control over it. You have control only when you're aware. Control. Smile to the awareness. And then at that point you have a chance to do something. Before that, sorry, that's just a habit of the mind. Accept that. Yeah. It's a tricky thing because it's natural. I don't know how else to say it in a way that and that sense of this is just the natural. Whatever you're experiencing now is the natural evolution, is the natural progression of what's previously happened. These are the habitual patterns of mind that we are trying to change in some ways if the old habits are not beneficial, or reinforce if they are beneficial. So that's the action part.
I guess a question. It relates to action.
Mhm.
So how can I know that my actions are, based on pure intention rather than conditioned thinking or programmed sort of reaction, even though I go through the process of being aware?
So initially it's an imperfect system. So you need to experiment. You kind of think, okay, that's as pure as it can get right now, and let's just do that. Look at the consequences. The consequences give your mind more data on it. And then when you see consequences, and I don't mean immediate consequences, it's consequences in terms of your mind states. You'd be able to basically reflect a little bit more. You can kind of do mindfulness in retrospect, which is what I like calling it. It's like later on, that's what happened there. And sometimes you can pick up little bits of other intentions that crept into that process, and that's fine. Whatever information and the important thing is, whatever information you pick up, be happy with it, because now you've got more data points. This is all an experimentation process, and we have imperfect information initially, and we want to allow it to allow ourselves to pick up more information. Wisdom comes from lots of data points, and that's just the way it is. So don't kick yourself if you made the wrong decision, but learn from it. That's what the reflection is about. Don't know if it totally answered your question. Do you have?
I think I'm also aware of the possibility of actions, being of pure intention, but still getting wrong in the outside world because of, possibly the data points, or maybe in some situations where the recipient or the outside world is not in attunement with, what do you call it? Yeah, the intention or.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a slight different use of the word intention. we usually use, in English, we usually use the word intention. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't intend for you to, I don't know, we use the word intention in a very different way. When I talk about the intention, I'm talking about something a little bit more nuanced than that. So when I talk about, sorry, my voice is going. When I talk about a pure intention, so the purity of it is reliant purely on whether there was aversion or greed or delusion in my mind. So if any of those states were present, the consequences will end up being not, and not necessarily the immediate consequences, the long-term consequences of that. So are not will follow according to whatever the intentions are. So when I talk about intentions, I'm talking about specifically to do with if I acted out of greed, or if I acted out of aversion, or delusion, they really have a big impact. So when we use the word intention in English, we usually think about it more into the cognitive sense. I didn't mean for that to happen, but I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about, yeah, you did, because you did it. If you did something, you meant for it to happen in a more absolute sense. I didn't mean to, I don't know, I didn't, yeah. So it's not that I meant to hurt you, but it's more that obviously, if I've put this down, I had an intention of putting it down, because otherwise it wouldn't have been put down. So I mean, I think there's a little bit of and I get that with a lot of my students. It's like, yeah, I think we're talking at cross purposes here. It's the mind state, and back to the Four Noble Truths. We're talking about the second noble truth in terms of the purifying the craving aspect of existence, so that you can move with less selfishness and more harmony with all around you. So that's what I mean by trust the pure intentions. If the intention is for more harmony, for more peace, for more beneficial things for the world, that's what I trust. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
I came up with a question.
Ooh, yes.
This mind illuminated in your practice. Do you consider it necessary to have the meditation cushion practice, or would it be possible to only practice in life without sitting?
I usually recommend sitting as well, because you get to have kind of a petri dish of your mind. You don't have in daily activities. It's really, really lovely because you've got all this potential stimulus for people. It's like things that you want, where that stimulate greed, or things that stimulate aversion. So that's really, really nice. But with your eyes closed, and that's what people usually feel in meditation retreats, particularly the first meditation retreats, they sit in meditation. They're taught to meditate in whatever way they're taught. And they spend maybe the first few days remembering things that other people have done to them. And they're blaming people all around them. Then after a few days, it's like, I've been on my own, in my own thoughts for all these days. It's often dawns on people that, hang on a sec, all that finger pointing out there has nothing to do with any of these people. It's my mind continuing. So there's an example of how sitting in silence without being able to logically blame anyone else, because you've been sitting in silence for days, helped you realize that a lot of this is actually my mind creating it. So in a similar way, a daily meditation practice, even if it's just for 10 minutes. So for example, like right now, if you were to do exactly what I said, what's happening right now, you've got lots of visual input that that you can say, okay, I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that, and sort of be quite superficial with it all. But with the eyes closed, for example, then generally what you hear might not enter into it as much. Certainly your visual sense will go down. You're not going to be tasting or smelling that much in all likelihood. So what are you left with? Bodily sensations and your mind. You're aware that you're thinking. You're aware that you're thinking, or you're stuck in thought. You're aware that you're breathing. You're aware that you're kind of getting restless and kind of thinking, I don't know what else to do. You're aware that whatever else is happening. And then you have to sit with yourself in a different state. And then that becomes a nice petri dish to explore your mind in a different way. So it's a little bit of a novelty factor that helps you. It's almost like, I don't know, putting that electron microscope onto that to see a little bit more clearly things that might not be as obvious initially if you don't sit. But do you have to? I encourage enjoyment and awareness. And so if it's enjoyable, why wouldn't you? And that's part of the reason why I encourage people to look out for pleasant sensations, so that they actually find a nice reprieve from the standard normal daily activities, and learn to actually be comfortable with themselves in a different way. So yes and no. Oh, not necessary. Yeah, useful, very, very useful. But at very least, and so I have a course, a 6-week course, a 12-week course, but it's but the first 6 weeks is really all I suggest that people do is put aside 10 minutes and try it for yourself and find that nice space for yourself. Because if you can create that nice space for yourself, what a gift you give yourself. So it should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be something you're forced to do in any way whatsoever.
I have another question.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit more theoretical, or because one thing I find very beautiful when you talk about this, when you talk about awareness and sort of that it sounds like things will just come by themselves when it comes to good intentions or whatever. And to me, this sounds very different from most other meditation practices, where I've at least had the idea that you train this attention. I know that sometimes you used to say, well, it's perfectly possible to think of a very mindful sniper who really focus their attention. But it sounds like you more emphasize that thing, if you just lean back into awareness, good things will come.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, if you lean back into awareness, things progress in a very nice, natural way. But there's a point in practice where awareness alone is not enough. There's a point in practice where you want to, I wouldn't say laser target, I'd say more in terms of incline your mind towards different things. So today we talked about the parami, the perfections, also known as the paramita. To incline your mind towards compassion, for example, is a really lovely practice to engage in. To incline your mind towards more patience or more generosity, another lovely practice to incline your mind towards, so you can be aware of when you are being generous and when you're not. You can be aware of when you're being kind to yourself and others and when you're not. And so we can actually set a compass for what we want to be aware of to build certain tendencies, or be aware of when we're becoming really impatient and take action to let go of that or do something else. So yes, initially people are generally too hard on themselves. And when they're too hard on themselves, nothing works. So that's when I sort of just say, just relax and be aware. You're fine. You're fine. After some time, you can get lost in, I'm aware, that's enough. You know, it becomes a bit of a la-la land that you're in. Like, okay, no. Let's tweak the system a little bit. And that's when we actually incline our minds towards certain things. And the training of attention, what you were talking about, the sniper focus, that's a little bit different. That's about training the attention. And that comes very quickly in the Mind Illuminated as well. But you use awareness to train attention. You use awareness to notice that your mind is wandering. Smile at the awareness to build more awareness. Once your mind stops wandering and you have intermittent distractions, you use awareness again to notice that you've been distracted. Then you bring your attention back. So you're always using awareness, ultimately, to notice what's happening. Because that's the function of awareness. It notices, it knows. And just recognizing the different qualities of the two things, I think really helps with the process of training attention. It just, I think, makes it clearer as to what exactly you're doing. Anything else?
Let's see if the online audience has any questions. Is there anyone from the online audience who has questions for Li-Anne?
I have another question, and it has to do with your question. When you ask for the difference between attention and awareness, and you described you described a moment of attention that was very pleasurable, expanded
Awareness.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. And I tend to do that when I meditate. I have these peak awareness experiences that I have a purpose of going there. I find myself being aware of what's happening and trying to have this other awareness that I've had before. And how would you what I do when I notice that I strive towards another previous experience? I try to accept where I am, but I think I still in the back of my head would like that. I think I do that. I try to accept that, but as a purpose of actually going to this great place. Awareness.
The emphasis there was try to accept it, but you're not actually accepting it. There's still what they call loba, the greed for that nice peak experience. And so when you notice that greed that arises, use that as the meditation object. It's like, okay, greed's arisen. This is interesting. This is one of the two things that if I get rid of, I am free from suffering. So this is actually really, really important here. There's greed here. What does greed feel like? Do you feel that lurching forward feeling? Can you explore it a little bit more? Can you be interested in this thing? Don't get annoyed at it. It's like, this is good. This is juicy here. Now you get to have the opportunity to understand one of the fundamental things that causes you to suffer. Okay, greed. What can you know about greed? what are the possible consequences when there's greed? How's my suffering level right now when I have that? Can you see the very direct relationship between greed and dukkha with suffering? Can you see it more? Oh yeah, I see it. Now I want to keep going to that peak. So no. Can you really understand it a little bit more? Can you map out what may have preceded it? What was that thought? It'd be nice to have that. Or, like what happened just before that? Be really interested in the phenomenon of greed. And I want to emphasize the word phenomenon. This practice of meditation is actually to understand the phenomena of our mind. So now you have this opportunity to understand. We're not looking to only have those lovely expanded awareness experiences. We're not looking to only have those laser focused attention, those and the peaceful qualities and all that. We're looking for full liberation. We're looking to eliminate suffering entirely. And you have this lovely opportunity to now explore it in a different way. Make use of that. And it becomes really interesting. Everything that we experience can be really, really interesting. You can have a sense of boredom and find that interesting. Imagine being interested in boredom. How different your experience would be. What is boredom? Perhaps it's an aversion to what's happening, or a greed for wanting something else, more stimulation or something else. It's like, be really interested in that. Everything ends up being any aspect of suffering ends up being tied up with greed or aversion or a confusion as to one or the other or both. I'm not sure. Just this delusion. Everything can be, and the more you understand that, the better it is. Does that sound like something that you could explore?
Yes. Now I know that liberation is on the other side if I solve this.
Exactly. It's like, it's understanding it. It's not getting rid of it. Because once the mind sees through it, it doesn't fall down that trap of it. And that's what liberation is. So anytime there's aversion to something, drop the thing you have an aversion to and use aversion as your meditation object. Be interested in it. How does that cause me to suffer? How much does it cause me to suffer? For how long? What else? When I've got a lens of aversion, when I turn my attention to something I normally like, how does that feel? When you have that lens of aversion, how does it cloud? How does it change your perceptions of other things in your life? That difference between the headache and the headache, that huge difference. That's that lens of aversion. When you've got that aversion, turn to some of your favorite fika things. It's like, how does that feel? It probably doesn't feel quite as nice. It's like it's this it clouds everything. So notice how much you're moving through life with this lens of greed or aversion or confusion. It becomes really fun. Everything becomes really interesting with the reason, with the aim to understand is what allows liberation.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So we're talking a lot about awareness here and the awareness of, for example, sounds and body sensations and stuff like that. Is awareness aware of itself?
And it's one practice that once you are very aware, you can be aware of awareness, and then awareness can be your meditation object. And sometimes students get to that point in their practice where they realize that, oh, awareness can look at itself and you can be aware of awareness. And then they redefine what awareness is, and they say that epitome is the only thing what awareness is and nothing else counts. And again, you've set up this hierarchy, which causes suffering, which because you're not in that peak experience. And so, and then we're back to the same thing. It's so easy to get hooked into believing this is it and everything else is not. What I'm experiencing is not. And therefore, that's causing suffering. So I often say to people, if you're suffering, that's an alarm bell that you're not aware, you're not accepting, you're not actually engaging this practice. It doesn't matter how noble you think what you're striving for is. You're striving with greed. There's a difference between having a greed for something and having an aspiration towards something. It's a very different feeling to it. So can you notice that mind state of, is it greed or is it aversion? Is it delusion or is it non-greed? In other words, generosity. Is it non-aversion? In other words, loving kindness. Is it non-delusion? In other words, wisdom. It happens frequently as well. Notice them all and act accordingly.
You have another question, Sandra?
How did you know?
Your brain seems to be going in that direction.
Well, because that's another thing. I talked about these peak experiences that I was striving towards, but also I think I sometimes use previous experiences to light up the room or just to recall that, yes, I have been aware of this ancestral connection, and I sort of call on that, and I can call on the interconnectedness, and I think that's something else.
Yes. So you notice it's very different. It felt very different when you were striving compared to when you were using previous experiences for inspiration or to jolt your memory. The quality of how you felt about it was very, very different. And so you start learning to trust yourself in terms of the quality of that, to go, okay, it may masquerade as that, but it's actually greed, because I recognize greed in its various forms. Actually now it's wisdom. I'm using past experience to actually help me build that mastery towards more regularly moving in that direction. So that's the subtlety of this. When you recognize greed and aversion, you recognize it when it's there and you recognize it when it's not. That's when you get to trust that process a little bit more.
So any last question for Li-Anne?
Your courses that you give, where can one find them? Is it
So my book at the moment is only available on Amazon. Though since being here, people have said, can you put it in Swedish bookstores as well? So yes, I'll tend to that tomorrow or in the next few weeks. And the courses are available on my website, freeingourmind.com. There's a lot of free content and a lot of there's some free courses, some blogs, articles, some videos, as well as a few courses as well. And the idea is to be able to introduce different ways of presenting the material to different people, hence the book, hence the courses. And I've got mentoring as well as teacher training.
Thank you so much, Li-Anne.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
So lovely being here. I don't think I've talked so much in a long time. What time is it? I started talking at 10.
8:30.
Okay, there you go. I think I won't talk tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Li-Anne.
Thank you very much.